Officer Ryan had been on the job for over a decade, but he had never experienced anything like this before. He had seen his fair share of grisly crime scenes, but there was something different about the scene in front of him. The victim was a young woman, her body twisted and contorted in an unnatural position. Ryan had seen enough death to know that this wasn't the work of a human. It was as if something had possessed her and forced her body to bend in ways that should have been impossible. As Ryan and his partner, Detective Jackson, began to investigate, strange things started to happen. Doors would slam shut on their own, objects would move without explanation, and they both felt like they were being watched. Ryan tried to brush it off as his imagination, but the feeling of being watched never went away. He began to have nightmares, visions of the victim's body coming to life and attacking him. As the investigation progressed, supernatural occurrences became more frequent and intense. They heard strange whispers in their ears, saw ghostly apparitions, and felt icy cold hands on their skin. Ryan knew he had to find a way to solve the case and put an end to the supernatural terror that was haunting him. But the clues were few and far between. The victim had no enemies, no one who would want to harm her. It wasn't until Ryan stumbled upon an old diary hidden away in the victim's apartment that the pieces began to fall into place. The diary belonged to a woman who had lived in the same apartment years before. She had been tormented by a malevolent spirit that had driven her to madness. Ryan and Jackson realized that they were dealing with an entity that had been haunting the apartment for years, possessing anyone who lived there and driving them to commit heinous acts of violence. But how could they stop something that was beyond their understanding? Ryan knew that he had to confront the entity, but he didn't know how. One night, as Ryan was sitting alone in the victim's apartment, he felt a cold breeze wash over him. He turned around to see the ghostly figure of a woman standing in front of him, her eyes glowing in the darkness. Ryan knew that this was his chance. He stood up and faced the entity, his gun at the ready. He spoke to it, trying to reason with it, but it was no use. The entity was too powerful, too consumed by its rage and hatred. As the entity surged forward, Ryan fired his gun, sending a bullet straight into its heart. The entity let out a blood-curdling scream and vanished into thin air. Ryan and Jackson were hailed as heroes, but Ryan knew that the memory of that supernatural encounter would stay with him forever. He had faced his deepest fears and come out the other side, but he knew that there were things in this world that we may never fully understand.
It was a dark and stormy night in the small town of Willow Creek. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain beat against the windows of the old, dilapidated mansion on the outskirts of town. The mansion had been abandoned for years, and many of the townspeople believed it to be haunted. But despite its reputation, a group of 5 friends had decided to spend the night there. They were thrill seekers, always looking for the next big adventure. They had heard the stories of the ghostly apparitions that haunted the mansion, and they were determined to see them for themselves. As they entered the mansion, they could feel the chill in the air. The place was dark and musty, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They made their way through the dusty rooms, searching for any signs of paranormal activity. As they entered the mansion, they could feel the chill in the air. The place was dark and musty, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They made their way through the dusty rooms, searching for any signs of paranormal activity, but as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Doors slammed shut on their own, and the furniture moved by itself. The friends tried to brush it off as their imagination, but the fear began to set in.
And then, they saw it. A figure appeared in the doorway, its eyes glowing red in the darkness. The friends screamed in terror as the figure floated towards them, its ghostly face twisted in a menacing grin. They made their way out of the mansion. They could feel the weight of what had happened settling on them. They had witnessed something truly terrifying, something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The haunted mansion of Willow Creek had claimed its latest victims, and the ghostly figure would continue to haunt the town for years to come.
I was home alone for a weekend a few years ago while I was still in high school. After school one day I was driving home, and when I passed in front of my house I thought I saw some old lady in white clothes in my sister's room looking through the window. I thought it was stupid, so I went into the room to check out what it was, but I couldn't find anything. I pretty much forgot about it until later that night I got a call from a very panicked and scared neighbor saying some old lady was pacing back and forth in my sister's room. I still have no idea what it was, and I've never seen anything like it since. It was an ordinary summer night. I had kept my windows open to let the cool breeze in. I was sitting in front of my computer working up late as usual. My eyes were tired and heavy as usual, my back hurting with pain, my fingers were numb since I was constantly typing. It was a long assignment and I had no notion of how much time it has passed. I looked at the clock at the right bottom of the PC. It was showing 3:30 a.m. The sun is going to rise within an hour or two. I should try to get some sleep, I thought to myself. There were a lot of emails left to be checked. Still, I ignored them and tried to close the PC. Suddenly, a notification popped up. Your login is successfully verified. You are ready to start the chat. Strange, I thought to myself. What the hell is it showing? I have not logged into a single website today. A chat box appeared in front of me. It showed my name. Martin is now talking with stranger. I wondered who is this strange person and how is he doing all this? I checked for my internet connection and found it was switched off. I showed a sigh of comfort, thinking that maybe it is just a chatbot, trying to advertise something. But the case was not simple as that. To my horror, the stranger dropped his first message, which was too real to be false. I am not a chatbot, so it is useless to check your internet. This single message scared the hell out of me. How is he talking when my internet is switched off, and how does he had I was thinking of a chatbot? Hello. Who is this person? How are you talking to me? I typed in the box. The question is not who am I, but the question is whom do I want, the stranger replied. You are Stephen McKnight, right? He asked me. Yes, how do you know me? Are you some relative or friend? I asked him. Do you have a friend or a relative? He asked me. No, I don't, I replied. You were born on the 15th of August 1998 in the MJK Childcare Hospital. Your parents were David McKnight and Stella McKnight. Both of them died in a car accident in New Jersey when you were just 3 years old. The date was the 22nd of March 2002. The time was 5:02 p.m. Your sister was lost that very day and you never found her, or shall I say, you never tried to find her. I was shocked to see the rightness of the details. Each detail was correct and happened to me. These details triggered my emotions, forcing me to remember my dark past, a life that I had deliberately left behind, a life that I never wanted to live, and I lived that has always remained in the shadiest corners of my mind. I wanted to start a new life, tried to forget everything that has happened, but one can never forget his past. I was lost in my world of ideas and guilt when a message appeared, recalling your past. What if I told you that you can change your past now, at this moment? But are you ready to take the risk? The clock struck 4 a.m. There was utter silence in my room, no motion, no movement. I was still sitting in my armchair, staring blankly and cluelessly at the screen. The chat box was still open, and to my surprise, the stranger was still connected to me. I still couldn't believe his words, or shall I say my words coming from his mouth. I never thought that I will meet such a strange person who knows every single thing I have done. Who are you, and what do you want from me? I typed in the chat. For a moment there was no reply. The stranger started writing. As said, I have an offer for you. You can change your past now at this moment if you are willing to pay a sacrifice. My heart stopped for a moment. Sacrifice. What is he talking about? I thought. Your time has come, Stephen. Now you have to choose between yourself and the past. You cannot forget your past, but you can change it now. It seems impossible to you all, but you have to trust me. Finally, I gave up. I had no other choice. On the other side is my conscience, telling me to stop, and on the opposite my dark past forcing me to accept the offer. It felt like getting stuck between heaven and hell, not knowing what to do next. Finally, I typed, yes. The stranger typed something. It read, good. Now go upstairs and jump from the building. Death is the only way to end your past, to end those thoughts. I closed my computer and stood up. My legs were not shaking anymore. I took the picture of Hannah and me, which we took on our first date. I stared a last look at my room. Looks like a prison, I told myself. I went upstairs and stood at the top of the wall. One more step and I will free. I took a last look at the sky. The stars never looked so shiny. I pulled the photo of Hannah tightly and took it near my chest. I could hear her voice calling me. No more worries. No more pain, anger, torture, and nothing. It will be just Hannah and me. Me. I opened my eyes. Hannah was sleeping beside me, hugging me so tight that I could barely breathe. Her face looked so innocent. I fondled and kissed her forehead. She loosened her eyes slightly. Her face was like an angel. Her smile never looked so beautiful. She said, "Stephen." Then everything blacked out.